4 weeks from now, the polls will be closing at this hour on this year's elections. It's time to meet the candidates. I'm joined tonight by Republican delegate Nick Freitas, who is challenging Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger in Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Delegate Freitas, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's always a minor miracle when all the technology works out. So tell us, what is this election about?
Well, I think it's about a number of things, but more and more, I really do think this is a question about what direction we want to go as a country. And I think that contrast is pretty significant. Do you want the government having significantly more control over your life, your healthcare, your business, or do you believe that we need to put power back in the hands of individuals to be able to make decisions for themselves? And I certainly come down on the side that we need to be empowering people by protecting their liberty, protecting their property rights, creating opportunity, but the government is not here to micromanage our lives.
And sometimes that can be difficult in a pandemic when people need the help of the government. But it's often said that presidential elections, as this one is, and all the down ballot races that are there as well, are often said to be a referendum on the president. Donald Trump won the 7th district by 6 points 4 years ago, but your opponent won it by 2 years later. So is it significant that you separate yourself to some degree policy-wise with President Trump on some of the major issues?
No, I think when you look at the accomplishments of the administration, whether it was lowering taxes, lowering regulations, you have peace deals in the Middle East. When it comes to things like criminal justice reform, this president has passed the most significant criminal justice reform in a generation. So I actually think there's a lot of positive things that we can run in, especially when you see the contrast, and that is that Congresswoman Spanberger and Joe Biden want to increase taxes by $4 trillion. They want to increase regulations. He's got a version of the Green New Deal that would go forward that would be absolutely devastating for energy prices. And so that's where it goes into. How do you want to solve problems? Do we empower individuals to be able to do more? Do we empower government? And I think we've got a good record to run on.
Well, about government's help then, what about the pandemic? Do you believe that it has been handled well by the federal government?
I think when you look at what the federal response is supposed to be in a situation like this, there's different responsibilities at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. The federal responsibility was to do things like ensure that we have travel bans from countries where you have hotspots. It was to allocate resources to hotspots across the country to ensure that we didn't overwhelm our medical system. You remember when we were first talking about this, the emphasis was on flattening the curve, and we were largely able to achieve that by the successful allocation of resources. Things can always be better, and we need to learn from this so that we can improve our systems going forward. But I do think that there are a lot of things that we were able to accomplish early on in order to ensure that we did not overwhelm our medical system.
So do you see a contrast in the way President Trump handled his own coronavirus case with the way Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has?
I think both of them obviously, have addressed this entire issue very, very differently. President Trump was big on allocating medical resources where they needed to be. Governor Northam took more of a draconian approach with respect to locking down the economy. And even now, we're starting to see some restrictions that I think probably are not working well, both from a health perspective and from an economic perspective. So I do think there's some significant contrast there. And again, it goes back to when we look at a problem like this, there's clearly some issues that need to be addressed from a centralized position. But in a lot of other questions, it would be better to allow localities and individuals to make decisions. Just make sure they have good information, make sure that they have the resources, but don't try to micromanage everything from Richmond.
Healthcare, according to exit polling, was a huge issue in 2018 in Abigail Spanberger's win. Republicans, including President Trump, say they have a plan to replace and certainly repeal Obamacare first. But the people with the pre-existing conditions, premiums could skyrocket if you don't bring other people into the pool. How do you cover those people in a pandemic?
I think that there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Premiums already skyrocketed with Obamacare. And so when we talk about getting rid of Obamacare, you already see bills like H.R. 962, which has been put forward with Republicans, that says that we'll maintain coverage for pre-existing conditions for vulnerable populations. The biggest thing that we have to do if we're serious about effectively addressing healthcare, you have to increase supply. And unfortunately, a lot of government regulations, a lot of taxes stand in the way of increasing that supply. When doctors are not allowed to work across state lines, when you can't get insurance across state lines, telemedicine, COPN laws, regulation after regulation has artificially restricted the ability of people to be able to get into the healthcare industry so that we can have greater accessibility, greater affordability. It's the only way that you can do it. When you have high demand, you have to have high supply, and removing those regulations will be a key step in making sure that everyone has access to quality and affordable coverage.
All right, Delegate, we appreciate the time. We've already run out, but we're going to rejoin you on Facebook at 7:30. So folks out there, please tune to CBS 6's Facebook page at 7:30, and we will continue this conversation with Delegate Nick Freitas, running in the 7th Congressional District in Virginia against Abigail Spanberger. Thank you, sir. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you.